Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of Dayspring Discussions. I'm your host Sean McGahee, and this is a show where we talk about movies, TV, sci-fi, fantasy, comic books. If you geek out about it, we're going to talk about it. You can listen to Dayspring Discussions on iTunes, YouTube, Podomatic, Patreon, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, wherever, guys. While you're there, rate, review, subscribe, then head on over to the Facebook group or Twitter account and join in the discussion. Don't forget dayspringdiscussions@gmail.com. Well, guys, today we have a very special episode because I am joined today by the Mistress of Mandalore herself, Miss Lisa Locke McGahee.
Hey.
All right, guys, so we're going to be doing something a little special here today. So Lisa has decided that she is going to go through the Star Wars books, actually the ones in the new canon, not Legends, from start to finish, basically starting from like earliest in canon, right?
Yeah, I'm going to do chronological order in the canon timeline.
Okay, cool. And so we're going to start, she wants to do some book reports. So we're going to call this Dayspring Discussions Book Reports Star Wars Edition. Okay? And so Lisa went through and she reread the first book chronologically in canon, which is Star Wars Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to sit back. Lisa's going to take the lead on this, and she's going to talk about the book, things she likes, things she dislikes, whether she recommends it, and just kind of go into a full-on book report about the book. So let me start off by just some general questions first. So Lisa, what prompted you to say you wanted to go through the Star Wars books?
Well, I mean, I see a lot on different, like, Star Wars sites I'm on, or, like, the Facebook groups and stuff where people are always like, hey, I think I want to read the books. What do you suggest? What are your favorites? How should I read them? I mean, I feel like these questions come up all the time. So I just thought, well, I might as well, I read them when they come out. And so I thought and right now with everyone being kind of trapped at home,
people are looking for recommendations.
Yeah, people are looking for things to read, and I have more time not necessarily to sit with a book. As you will find out, I listen to most of the books on Audible while I'm sewing. Currently working on sewing some face masks, so it's a good time to sew some face masks, listen to some books. And then I just thought I would share my opinion, and the benefit now, what I'm hoping also is, I'm going to go through the main portion of the book report myself. I listened to the audiobook, which is read by Jonathan Davis. Not my favorite of the ones who reads the Star Wars books, but he does a really great job as well. So if what's holding you back from getting into the Star Wars canon novelizations is actually having time to read, I highly recommend the audiobooks. You can get them from the library. If you have a local library card, you can get them from the library on using like an Overdrive app or whatever.
Yeah, you can download them.
Yeah, you just download the Overdrive app and log into your library's account with your library card, and anyone can get a library card. I mean, right now it might be a little challenging because I don't think libraries are technically open to go in. But if you already have a library card, then Overdrive is a good option of places to get them. As well, like I said, I just use Audible. To me, it's worth using my Audible credit for all the Star Wars books because, like I said, they're really great audiobooks. Anyway, so we're going to jump into Master and Apprentice.
What's the timeline? Where are we at? And where does this take place?
That's a good question.
Because I know it's about, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon before Phantom Menace. How many years before? Because I think it's like, is it 10?
With Master and Apprentice, we're basically starting in the timeline. This is one of the earliest ones that we get to. It's 39 years before the Battle of Yavin, which is how timelines generally are in the Star Wars universe.
Yes, supposed to, at least.
That's a whole side story. There actually is another novelization that takes place kind of overlapping with this one. It's the Dooku Jedi Lost, which I'll probably do a quick review on maybe in a couple of days because that one's quick to get through. It wasn't. I didn't include it originally because it was not originally released as a novelization. It was only an Audible book, but now they have actually released a novelization of it, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
So I wasn't going to include that one because it wasn't an actual novel, but now that I believe they've actually made it a novel. So it falls into about the same thing, has a lot of overlap. So we're 39 years before the Battle of Yavin. Master and Apprentice, basically the overall story of this is it's about Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, right? So Qui-Gon is the master, Obi-Wan is the Padawan. Obi-Wan's about 14 in the story. I think they said that Qui-Gon's in his like early 40s. They didn't exactly say how old he was, but I think it was insinuated that he was kind of in his early 40s. So one of the main things about the story that is so interesting, like I said, the main character, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, it's about their relationship as master, basically, and apprentice, master and Padawan, and how they struggle, which is really interesting because in the movies, the only time we ever see them together, only time we ever see Qui-Gon at all, is in episode 1. And in that, you don't get any kind of sense that they have any kind of conflict. They just seem to be kind of a seamless couple. Like they work well together. So this book kind of shows you back, and it talks a lot about during their time together as Master and Padawan, how they did struggle. They struggled a lot. They didn't have necessarily a great bond. They didn't really, not that they didn't get along, but they didn't understand each other. And so I think it's really interesting how they dive into that. But they also go a lot into Qui-Gon's history with his master, who was Dooku. One of the other, Dooku doesn't really make a presence in this book, but they do talk about him a lot. Qui-Gon has, memories of when he was a Padawan to Dooku, as he's trying to find parallels between him and Obi-Wan. But one of the other main characters in the story is another Jedi who was Dooku's Padawan before Dooku took on Qui-Gon, and that's Rael Averross, who is the other main character in this. So basically, in the story, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan go on an adventure. They go to a planet called Pajali, where Rael has been there for the last 10 years, I think, basically serving as kind of the unofficial leader, while the Queen, who is a minor, was getting to be old enough to actually rule herself. So the story is basically about the Queen getting ready to actually become the Queen. And, she's 14, turning 14, and that's the point, I guess, where they become, with maturity. There's a lot of, anyway. But it's basically about that whole situation. So those are kind of the main characters we see. It's really, really interesting. There's also some parallels where they talk about the Jedi Council. There's a lot of talk about, things we've heard about, or we've in other books, but are touched upon in some of the films, where with just kind of how the Jedi Council, what is Jedi becoming? If you watch the Clone Wars at all, you see the Ahsoka's torn about things like, is the Jedi really doing what it's supposed to be doing? And there's a lot of that discussion in this too. Who does the Jedi Council serve? Who are the Jedi serving? Who are the Jedi becoming? Are all their rules there for a good reason or a bad reason? What does it serve? So it's got a lot of really interesting political talk. So if you like any of the books that have, political stuff in there, it's really interesting. There's a lot of interesting talk in this one about slavery in the galaxy, which helps bring a little bit more understanding to Qui-Gon and when he meets Anakin in episode 1. There's a lot of talk of the prophecies in this one. You come to understand, where Qui-Gon got his interest in the prophecies. So there's just a lot of really interesting things. Is there anything plot-wise that you can remember, Sean, that I've kind of skipped over that?
Well, I mean, you did talk about it, the prophecies. That's the always thing that always grabbed me was, of course, the obvious, the further in-depth look into Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan's relationship, because that's one of the things that I always wanted to explore more in, Star Wars was, their relationship, because it seemed like an interesting duo. And before the new canon, back in Legends, there were a couple adventures between them that aren't canon anymore that I enjoyed. And then, just seeing that young Obi-Wan too, I always enjoyed seeing that since he was one of my favorite characters in Star Wars, just their relationship. And again, just talking about the prophecy regarding the Chosen One, and a little more in-depth into that. And again, just going more in-depth with the characters. But I really liked Rael. I've seen how he's that different kind of Jedi versus what we're getting in the prequels, which, always seem to be, part of the Jedi Order. They're in their brown robes. They're very conformist, I guess you would say, where they're all very similar. None of them really like to stick out unless you're talking about, Anakin or Ahsoka or something like that. And then Rael, like I said, still considers himself a Jedi, but he's a very different kind of Jedi. I definitely would compare it to later on, say in Rebels, where we get Kanan Jarrus, who is, a Jedi, but a very different Jedi. So I like, again, just seeing that those different qualities, not saying that they all have to be the same, but you can still be a Jedi with that.
But with the difference between comparing him with Kanan, Kanan is a different kind of Jedi because he wasn't really raised in the Jedi Order. The Jedi Order was gone before he became old enough to really be, you almost can kind of consider the Jedi as a cult, So he kind of got out of it because they all died before he had a chance to really become completely taken in by the rules and the guidelines and the structure of the Jedi Order. Where Rael is like that, but in a time when they're not supposed to be. Yeah. But I think that's one of the interesting things that makes the novels more interesting than the movies in a lot of ways too, is the movies only show you a tiny little smidget of the Jedi. And the ones that you see, aside from Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka's not in the movies, but you know what I mean? Like, outside of that little tiny inner circle of, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, Anakin, the only ones you ever see really are the ones that are on the Jedi Council. And they obviously are the ones that follow the rules. They are the rules. So you don't see a lot of those ones that we're finding now in the novels where they're showing us some of these other Jedi who maybe didn't always follow the rules, who were a little bit more, picking and choosing into what they are going to believe and what they are going to follow. And then getting their input a little bit. Like if you've watched the Clone Wars, spoilers, there's the history between like Obi-Wan and Satine. So you find this experience where Anakin isn't the only one who's ever been in love or who's had a relationship, outside of the rules of the Jedi Order. I mean, Obi-Wan was in love with Satine. And then you find in this one, too, which, that Qui-Gon, they don't really explain it, but they hint a lot that Qui-Gon had a romantic interest sometime in his past as well. Obviously, and Rael does. He doesn't take that rule that they can't... Attachment. He gives a very different perspective of what that means. So I think it's just really interesting because it takes a lot into the background, kind of shakes up a little bit about what you thought you knew about the Jedi, especially if you only know anything from the films, or even from the show and the films. There really is a lot more depth to the Jedi that they go into in the novelizations, which make them really interesting. But,
yeah, I think as people, especially if you just know the movies or you just have seen the movies or even the Clone Wars for instance, I think it's one that a lot of general casual Star Wars fans would like because it is still centered around characters such as Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, and you're getting more into their history. So I think unlike some of the other novels that I think are a little more in depth, this one I think is still a little more towards the surface to where the casual fans can enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean they bring in not necessarily places I mean Pajali is a new planet, but they do talk about places you've heard of. They bring in obviously characters They even bring in some creatures that like the creature, I can't remember what it's called, that Obi-Wan in episode 3, the one that he's riding when they think that they kill him, that like bird running, he meets that creature in this book. And it's interesting because it just throws in little things that that you've seen in the films just to kind of bring little touches. So I think you're right. I think this is definitely one. If you're just starting to get into, or you want to find a book to start on, this is probably a good one because you do know the characters. It's not hard to follow. It's an interesting story. Claudia Gray is an amazing writer.
Yes.
So she makes it really interesting for you to kind of. This is a good one to kind of, put your toes in the water.
And it's definitely one of the ones after you read it, go back and watch episode 1. And you'll get that in more depth to it. Especially the epilogue to this is also flash forwarding to Qui-Gon's funeral and what Obi-Wan is feeling during the funeral as well, getting a little more in his head too, which I enjoyed the epilogue of it too. But like I said, if you're a casual Star Wars fan, and again you want to take a dip into more of these characters, I think it's a good one to go with.
Yeah, and overall opinion, I really like this story. What about you? I mean, it's not my favorite of the Star Wars books, but I do like it a lot.
I would probably. I mean, it's definitely out of all the Star Wars books we've read in the current canon. Definitely in the top 10, possibly the top 5.
It wasn't in my top 5. We did our top 5.
Yeah, we've done ours before. I know it was definitely. I think it was probably in my top 5, but I've probably read a couple more since then. But it's definitely in my top 10.
Yeah, no, I agree. I really like it a lot, but it's not my favorite. But it's a great one. And I think this is one that definitely women and men would both enjoy. Like I said, we both really enjoyed it. I don't think this is one that necessarily caters to one audience over the other. So. overall, I'm going to give it a thumbs up. I encourage you to read it.
I give it a thumbs up as well. Okay. All right, guys. Well, that is going to be it. So go out, check out Master Apprentice. Fire back on the social media groups and Gmail account and let us know what you think about it if you've already checked it out. And we'll be back next time with a couple more. What's the next one you're going to read?
Well, I was going to go to the next one in the timeline, but I think now I'll go back and do Dooku real quick before I jump into the next one. The next one after that is the Queen's Peril, but that's not out yet.
Yeah. So it's going to go, so we go down, let's see here.
The Queen's Shadow. So depending on how long I can drag my feet, I might be able. When does the Queen Peril come out?
Queen Peril comes out
not till June. So never mind. So yeah, I'll probably go ahead and do Dooku next, and then I'll jump to the Queen's Shadow. But right now there's a little tiny break because we're reading the new novelization of this
Rise of Skywalker.
So once I finish that, we'll probably do that one, even though it's out of timeline, just because it's new and you were wanting to talk about it.
It's the newer one. Yeah, exactly. I've already read it. Lisa's in the middle of it right now. The Blu-ray comes out on Tuesday too.
Yeah. So we'll probably do a talk about the film, the book after that. But then the next one I'll do is Dooku.
Exactly. Cool. All right, guys. Well, like I said, fire back in those social media groups and Gmail account. Let me know any questions or if you've read the book, what do you think about it? Because we love to talk about this stuff. But that's it for today. Hope you guys are safe out there. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your week. Enjoy your life. And until next time, may the Force be with us all.